The bustling city is immersed in the gentle glow of a late afternoon sunset. The streets were crowded with people passing by, all hurriedly with quick steps. Emily, the 12-year-old girl, was on her way home after school. With her backpack slung over her shoulder and her favorite comic book clutched in her hands, Emily often notices the small things around her, things that adults sometimes overlook in the hustle and bustle of life. That day was like any other. But suddenly, Emily's gaze stopped at an unusual sight. An elderly man, thin and with white hair, was standing in the middle of the road. He seemed lost, his confused gaze sweeping around as if trying to find something, but unable to remember what it was. The old man did not notice the car speeding by, nor did he perceive the indifferent glances from those around him. His hands trembled, his gestures so awkward that Emily felt as if he were battling himself in some kind of chaos. Emily stopped, her eyes clearly showing worry. What is he doing in the middle of this busy road? She wondered. Looking around, she noticed that no one stopped to help him. A few people just glanced, then continued walking, as if the old man's presence was not important enough for them to take the time to care. Emily's sensitive heart could not bear the sight. I can't leave him there alone, the little girl thought to herself. Emily quickly walked over and gently placed her hand on the old man's arm. Sir, are you okay? The girl's voice was gentle but full of worry. The old man startled and turned around, his eyes lost like a child who had wandered off. After a moment, he shook his head, his voice hoarse as he exclaimed, I don't remember anything. Where is your house? You don't know. Those words made Emily pause for a moment. She had never met anyone like him before, an adult, yet so weak and lost. She knew she couldn't just ask a few questions and leave. It's okay, sir. Let me help you. We will find a way to get you home, she said, her eyes resolute and full of empathy. The old man kept looking at the little girl, his cloudy eyes seemingly glimmering with a hint of hope. Although he didn't say it explicitly, he let Emily guide him through the crowded street. After a while of chatting, Emily learned that his name was William, but he couldn't remember anything else. She decided to take him to her house to rest and would ask her mother to find a way to contact his relatives. While walking beside him, Emily couldn't help but think about the loneliness emanating from Mr. Williams' demeanor. An elderly person like him should be living in the care and love of a family. Yet now, he wanders through the big city, with no one to care for him, no one to stop and ask how he is. I will do something to help him, Emily thought to herself, her eyes full of determination. The sunset over the city gradually descended, casting shadows over two figures, a petite girl and an elderly man, slowly walking on the path home. That was the moment that marked the beginning of a special relationship, where the kindness of a little girl and the companionship of an old man would change both of their lives forever. When Emily helped Mr. William cross the street, she could clearly sense the fatigue and confusion in his slow gait. The old man's unsteady steps and vacant gaze made Emily even more determined not to abandon him like that. The girl gently continued to converse to keep him alert, but William's fragmented responses only made Emily more worried. Do you remember anyone at home? Is anyone waiting for you at home? She asked, but he just shook his head, his eyes momentarily clouded as if trying to remember. When she couldn't find any clues, Emily decided to take Mr. William to her home so he could rest and recover. During the journey, the girl noticed that he sometimes mumbled disjointed words about a big house and a garden, but he couldn't elaborate further. However, his voice was not at all unpleasant, but rather full of gratitude as Emily patiently guided him. After helping Mr. William drink some water and sit down on the small armchair in the living room, Emily called her mother for advice. While waiting for her mother to return, the girl continued to chat with Mr. William, hoping to find more information to help him get back home. What do you like to eat the most, sir? Emily asked gently, trying to evoke memories within him. William quietly looked at her, his eyes seemingly sinking deep into a stream of vague memories. Apples. She. She often peeled apples for me, he said softly, a smile briefly appearing on his aged face. Emily didn't quite understand who she was, but the warmth in his voice made her sense a beautiful memory being evoked. Gradually, William recalled a few important details. The house has a white fence, and there's a large oak tree in the backyard, he said, his voice trailing off but his eyes brightening a bit. Based on those clues, Emily and her mother searched for the address on the map and discovered an area that matched his description. Emily immediately took him along, determined to help him return. When they arrived, the large house with the white fence and the old oak tree, just as described by Mr. William, appeared before their eyes. The gate opened, and a man in a butler's uniform quickly stepped out, his face full of worry. "Sir, where have you been?" "We've been looking for you all afternoon," the butler said, his voice trembling. William paused for a moment, as if not realizing he had returned home, but his gaze gradually softened as he saw the familiar surroundings. "Oh, this is my home," he said softly, his voice choked with emotion. The butler smiled at Emily, unable to hide his gratitude. "Thank you very much. Without you, Mr. William might have continued wandering the streets." Emily felt the warmth in those words, but her gaze lingered on William. Although he had returned home, he still radiated an indescribable loneliness. In that moment, Emily understood that he not only needed to be taken home, but also something greater: genuine care and companionship from others. A deep sense of empathy welled up in the girl's heart, and she told herself that she would not let this relationship end here. When preparing to leave, William unexpectedly took Emily's hand, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, dear. You are a kind girl," he said, his voice trembling. Emily smiled and replied, "It's nothing, sir. If you need anything, just call me." The butler suggested that Emily come back to play anytime she wanted. Emily, with her warm heart and rare empathy, agreed immediately, without any hesitation. Since that moment, a special bond has formed between Emily and Mr. William, a connection that began with kindness and will develop into a cherished friendship, changing both of their lives. Since the day she helped William return home, Emily considered visiting him as part of her daily life. Every afternoon after school, the little girl carefully wrapped a few cookies in a small box, brought her favorite book, and never forgot to include a bright smile. Stepping through the familiar white gate, Emily was always warmly welcomed by the butler, as if she were an indispensable part of this house. Every time he meets Emily, William seems to become a few years younger. Although his memory was no longer intact, the warm smile of the little girl always stirred in him a strange sense of peace. "You've come, little girl," he often said, his eyes lighting up with rare joy. In those moments, the quiet room seemed to come alive with the laughter of Emily and William. Emily often brings along funny stories to tell William. Even though sometimes he doesn't remember the beginning of the story by the time she finishes telling it, it doesn't matter. For Emily, seeing Mr. William laugh or listen intently was enough to make her happy. Once, she brought a book about nature, and they both sat in the garden under the shade of a large oak tree. Emily read, while William sat listening, occasionally nodding or smiling, as a story evoked a vague image in his mind. William's favorite moments are the chess games with Emily. Even though he no longer remembered all the rules, the little girl always patiently guided him from the beginning. Every time Emily won, he laughed heartily and joked, "I need to practice more if I ever want to beat you." Those simple games were not just a way to kill time, but also moments that helped William feel connected to the world around him. Through their conversations, Emily gradually realized that William was not just an elderly man with Alzheimer's disease, but also a person with a rich inner world and a life full of untold stories. Occasionally, in moments of clarity, William would tell her about his youth, when he was a successful founder in the technology field. He once created something that people called groundbreaking, he vaguely said. Although the details in the story might be mixed up, through his bright eyes, Emily knew that it was a time he was very proud of. Emily feels like a little friend whom Mr. William trusts. She not only brings him joy, but also learns valuable life lessons from him. She gradually realized that, although his memory was no longer intact, his heart was still full of love and gratitude. The friendship between Emily and William not only brought joy to him, but also changed the way the little girl viewed life. She realized that sometimes small things, like a smile, a funny story, can bring great meaning to others. Emily did not see her meetings with William as a responsibility, but as joy and sincere connection. She always looked forward to visiting him not only because she wanted to bring him joy, but also because she herself felt the warmth and peace from this special friendship. William couldn't remember all the times Emily visited, but every time he saw her appear, his heart swelled with a feeling of comfort and happiness. "You are the light in my dark days," he said once, his voice choked with emotion. Even though his memory faded, the feeling of Emily's kindness and sincerity remained, like a lamp illuminating the last days of his life. Emily not only visited William as a guest, but gradually became a true friend of his. Every time she visited, the little girl brought something new to share, from a song she had just learned in music class, a small painting she had made herself, to the dishes her mother cooked. But above all, Emily knows that the most precious thing she can bring to William is her time and attention. Emily often sat with William on the bench in the garden, where he could gaze at the large oak tree he had planted when he was young. She skillfully brought up the topic, asking him about his youth, about the small joys he still remembered. Although William's memories were fragmented, sometimes Emily's questions would also evoke beautiful fragments of memories that he thought he had forgotten. One time, when Emily asked, "What did you enjoy doing the most when you were young?" William suddenly smiled brightly, his eyes lighting up as if he had just rediscovered something precious. "He used to love dancing. Back then, every weekend, he and your grandmother, by that, he means his wife, would often dance together in the living room. Those were the best days," he said, his voice choked with emotion. Emily listened attentively, not interrupting, so he could naturally reminisce. Sometimes she sings the classic songs he used to listen to, or plays the old records the butler found, to help him reconnect with the happy moments of the past. The music plays, and sometimes William gently nods, his feet tapping to the rhythm, as if he were reliving his youthful days. Not only does Emily bring joy, but she also helps William make daily activities more enjoyable. When playing chess, she didn't care about winning or losing, but always patiently guided him, helping him remember each rule. There were times when William forgot he was playing, but instead of getting frustrated, Emily laughed heartily and said, "It's okay, Grandpa. We can start over." The important thing is that we're having fun. Emily's gentle way of speaking, her patience, and her smile made William feel respected and loved, something he had been lacking in recent years. Gradually, Emily's presence became an indispensable part of William's life. He looked forward to the afternoons when Emily finished school and stopped by, bringing laughter and vibrancy that he couldn't find anywhere else. The little girl not only filled the gaps in his memories, but also filled the void in his heart, a place once shrouded in loneliness. One time, when Emily was reading a story to William, he suddenly took her hand. His gaze was gentle yet full of emotion. "You know, You are the most wonderful thing that has happened to me over the years." "He may not remember everything, but he will never forget you," he said, his voice trembling. Emily didn't say anything, just held his hand tightly, but her warm smile said it all, that she cherished this friendship and that she would always be there for him. From small actions like playing a game of chess, listening to an old song, or sitting and listening to an unfinished story, Emily brought great meaning to William's life. He no longer felt like a burden, no longer consumed by loneliness. Instead, each of his days became a series of precious moments, thanks to the care and genuine friendship that Emily showed him. Michael Carter, the man busy with work and important meetings, often monitored his father from afar through the security camera system installed throughout the house. One day, while checking the footage to ensure his father's safety, he accidentally saw a small brown-haired girl sitting and chatting with Mr. William. At first, Michael just glanced, but the girl's frequent presence began to catch his attention. Every day, he sees the little girl bringing small items, a book, a box of cakes, or even a flower from somewhere, and spending hours sitting next to her father. She not only helped him play chess, but also patiently listened to him talk, even when his stories were disjointed and illogical. In the girl's eyes, Michael did not see annoyance or confusion, but rather empathy and genuine love. This surprised him. At first, Michael was curious and didn't understand why a little girl, clearly having no relation to his family, could spend so much time with his father. However, as he observed more closely, a feeling of emotion gradually welled up in his heart. Through each frame, Michael realized that Emily had brought to his father what he, as a son, had been unable to provide for many years: joy and companionship. Once, Michael witnessed through the screen as Mr. Bothing, William was telling a convoluted story that even he couldn't understand. But Emily didn't interrupt. She nodded, smiled, and occasionally asked questions, as if Mr. William's words were the most interesting thing she had ever heard. When the story ended, the little girl burst out laughing and said, "I'm sure you were a wonderful person back then." Her radiant smile made even Michael, through the screen, feel a bit of warmth. In the following weeks, Michael couldn't stop watching the moments Emily spent with his father. He realized that the little girl not only brought laughter to Mr. William, but also made him feel cared for and loved. Previously, Michael always thought that professional care services were enough for his father to have a comfortable life. But now, he realizes that it is not the convenience or material things, but Emily's presence that truly makes his father happy. The more he observed, the more Michael clearly felt that Emily did not do this for any benefit or reward. The girl's actions simply stemmed from her kindness and natural empathy. That made him feel both grateful and guilty for having let his father be lonely for too long. Michael realized that, while he was preoccupied with work and the pressures of life, Emily, a petite little girl, had taken it upon herself to do what he should have done long ago: bring joy and meaning to their father's life. Michael began to think about how he could express his gratitude to Emily. He didn't want to interfere with the special bond between the girl and his father, but he also wanted to do something to thank her. In his heart, Michael also felt that he needed to change, not only to become a better son, but also to learn to appreciate the values that Emily had taught him through her actions. Michael decided to keep an eye on her for a while to understand her better. He even took the time to talk to the butler to find out how his father had changed since Emily appeared. The butler confirmed that Mr. William had been much happier and more lively than before. He no longer frequently sank into the stupor of illness, but seemed to look forward to Emily's appearance every day. One evening, while looking at the image of his father and Emily playing chess under the sunlight in the garden, Michael couldn't hold back his emotions. He understood that this relationship not only brought joy to his father, but also changed the way he viewed care and love within the family. Emily taught him a great lesson, that sometimes small but sincere actions can create significant changes, not only for the recipient, but also for those who witness them. One warm afternoon, Emily sat in the living room with Mr. Williams' butler. While waiting for him to come down from the study, the girl curiously looked around at the paintings hanging on the walls and the memorabilia displayed in the spacious room. On a wooden shelf, there is an old picture frame with a young Mr. Williams standing among a group of people at a formal ceremony. He wore an elegant suit, holding a large trophy with the inscription, "Businessman of the Year." Emily picked up the photo, smiled, and asked the butler, "Was Mr. William a businessman? He looks really cool in this photo." The butler, with a proud yet slightly sad smile, nodded, "Not just a businessman, my dear. Mr. William was once a famous billionaire. He founded a technology company that changed the world. At one point, his name was mentioned everywhere." Emily opened her eyes wide, looking at the butler in astonishment. "Is he really a billionaire?" she asked, her voice tinged with skepticism. To Emily, William was just a simple old man who enjoyed listening to her stories and playing chess. The thought that he was once a powerful and wealthy man left her astonished. The butler continued, "That's right, but he never let wealth overshadow the values of family and humanity. Mr. William always believed that the meaning of life lies in simple things, not in fame or wealth." Emily was silent for a moment, thinking about what she had just heard. The girl suddenly felt a bit embarrassed. But then she smiled, put the photo back in its place, and said, "To me, Mr. William is still my best friend. Billionaire or not, it doesn't matter." From that day on, Emily didn't mention that Mr. William was a billionaire to anyone, not even to her parents. For her, what made him special was not his wealth, but the way he smiled when she told a funny story, or how he held her hand to thank her after each chess game. Emily still brought homemade cookies, still sat for hours telling him about her days at school as if nothing had changed. This only made Michael, William's son, respect Emily even more. He knew that many people, upon discovering his father's wealth, would immediately change their attitude. But Emily was different. The girl didn't let that affect her relationship with William. Michael realized that it was Emily's sincerity and simplicity that made his father feel truly loved, something that money or fame could never buy. William had no idea that Emily had discovered the truth about his past. He only felt that every time the little girl visited, the whole house seemed to light up. Even though sometimes his memory didn't allow him to remember every story or detail, he always felt comfortable and at peace when Emily was around. One day, while sitting under the large oak tree in the garden, William suddenly said, "You know, in my life, many people have come and gone. But only a few people made him feel truly loved. You are one of them." Emily smiled gently, took his hand, and said, "I think we are best friends, aren't we, Grandpa?" The truth about William did not change the way Emily treated him, but it did create a significant shift in how Michael perceived his father and the little girl. He clearly saw that love and kindness do not distinguish between rich and poor or status, and it was Emily, an ordinary little girl, who proved this. For Michael, this is not only a great lesson, but also an opportunity for him to reflect on his life and connect with his father in a way he has never done before. Here it is, written exactly as you've provided. As the days went by, William's condition worsened. Alzheimer's disease gradually erases his memory, and moments of clarity become increasingly rare. There were times when Emily visited, he would just look at her with a confused expression, asking, "Who are you?" or "Why are you here?" Those questions were like small knives cutting into Emily's heart. But instead of leaving with a heavy heart, The little girl smiled gently and patiently, reintroduced herself. I'm Emily, your dear friend. I brought the cookies you like. Every time like that, even though William didn't always remember her, Emily still sat beside him, recounting old stories, reading his favorite books, or simply watching the old oak tree in the garden with him. The girl knew that even if he couldn't remember her name, the feeling of safety and familiarity she brought was still there. There are days when William becomes irritable and frightened, especially when he doesn't recognize the people around him, even the familiar butler. Emily witnessed those moments, her heart aching, but she did not let the sadness discourage her. The girl still sat beside him, holding his hand and speaking soothingly. It's okay, Grandpa. I'm here. You don't need to be afraid. One time, in a panic, William looked at Emily and said, Don't leave me alone. Emily held his hand tightly, tears welling up, but her voice remained steady. I promise, I will never leave you. Even though things became more difficult, Emily never thought about giving up. To her, William was not just a sick old man, but also a close friend, someone she had devoted all her love and care to. She knows that even when illness takes away his memory, the feelings they share remain intact and sincere. Emily often talked to William about the days they played chess, listened to music, or told stories together. Whether he remembers or not, she believes that those memories will always be a part of his soul. The girl realized that what mattered was not whether he remembered her or not, but that she was still here, helping him through the toughest days. Michael, from afar, still silently observed. He saw Emily's efforts to keep his father feeling loved and safe, even when she had to face moments when William no longer recognized her. The girl's patience and kindness deeply moved Michael. He began to realize that love and genuine care have a greater power than anything else, and Emily, a petite little girl, had taught him that. One time, when Michael met Emily in the garden after a tense afternoon, he said to her, Thank you, Emily. You have done things that many adults, including me, cannot do. You are a precious gift to your father, uncle, and this entire family. Emily looked at him, smiling. I just want you to be happy and feel like you're not alone. I think that is more important than anything else. Although William's memory is fading, Emily remains a small light in his dark days. Her patient actions, gentle words, and presence not only brought comfort to William, but also left a deep impression on Michael and those around them. It was Emily's sincerity that proved love could transcend all boundaries, even the forgetfulness caused by illness. One autumn afternoon, as the pale golden sunlight streamed through the window, William sat on his familiar wooden chair under the shade of the large oak tree. Emily, as usual, came to visit him after school. But this time, the atmosphere was somewhat different. William, though his outward appearance remained calm, carried a particularly gentle and profound look in his eyes. He gestured for Emily to sit down beside him. With a trembling yet warm voice, he said, You are the last light in my life. Even though he doesn't remember everything, he always knew that you made his last days truly meaningful. Emily was silent, her eyes brimming with tears, but still trying to maintain a smile so he wouldn't worry. The girl held his hand and gently replied, You are also my best friend. I am very grateful to have met you. In that moment, William didn't need to say another word. Just the way he looked at Emily was enough to convey all the love and gratitude he had for the little girl. A few days later, William passed away peacefully in his sleep. His death left a great void in the hearts of Emily, Michael, and the people working in the house. After the funeral, Michael called Emily to meet him privately in his office. In his hand was an old letter, handwritten by William before he passed away. Michael handed the letter to Emily, his eyes filled with emotion. Your father wrote this letter just for you. He always cherished you as part of the family, he said. Emily opened the letter. each trembling but sincere line of William's handwriting revealed. Dear Emily, if you are reading this letter, perhaps I am no longer in this world. But I want you to know that you have brought great meaning to my life in its final years. You are not just a friend, but also like a granddaughter he always wished he could have. He left a part of his estate to you, not because he thought you needed it, but because he wanted you to have the opportunity to pursue your dreams without obstacles. You deserve all the best things because you have brought him joy that nothing in this world can replace. Live well, Emily, and remember, your kindness is a precious gift that I hope you will bring to the world. Love, William. After Emily finished reading the letter, Michael sat down across from her, his eyes reflecting genuine emotion. Your father always said that you changed his life, he said. I know, even though I am his son, there are things you have done that I have never been able to do. I am truly grateful to you for being by my father's side when he needed it the most. Emily bowed her head, choked with emotion, and replied, I haven't done anything grand. I just want Mr. William to feel happy and loved. Michael smiled, and that is what made the difference. You taught me that sometimes just kindness and sincerity can change a whole life. The part of the estate that William left behind was not what Emily cherished the most, but rather the lesson of compassion and the value of bringing joy to others. The girl decided to use that money to fulfill her dream, to become a doctor, helping the elderly, the weak, and the lonely, just like William. With Michael's support, Emily began her educational journey with a heart full of determination and gratitude. The story of Emily and William is not just a tale of friendship between two generations, but also a testament to the power of compassion. From a simple girl, Emily brought joy and meaning to the last days of a once rich old man, while also learning that the true value of life does not lie in material things, but in sincere connections and love. Emily continued her journey, carrying the memory of Mr. William like a guiding light. She knew that no matter where life took her, the lesson from this special friendship would always be in her heart, that kindness, no matter how small, could change a life. The relationship between Emily and William is not merely a friendship between a little girl and an old man, but also a symbol of compassion and connection that transcends all boundaries. Emily, with her sincere heart, never saw Mr. William as an old man with a disease, but always saw in him a close friend, a soul in need of love and companionship. On the contrary, William, despite his memory being blurred by Alzheimer's disease, always feels the warmth that Emily brings. Every small action of the little girl, from her smile, her hand-holding, to her funny stories, brings the joy that he has long been missing. Their relationship is a vivid testament to the fact that kindness can break down all barriers, from age to social status. The bond between Emily and William also shows that sometimes we don't need to do grand things to change someone's life. Just a little time, patience, and a sincere heart can make someone else's world a better place. The story of Emily and William conveys a profound message that love and compassion not only have the power to heal past wounds, but also create real miracles in life. Emily's sincere care not only helped Mr. William feel loved in his final days, but also awakened human values in those around him, such as Michael, William's son. The lesson from this story also reminds us that small actions, a word of inquiry, a handshake, or simply being present can leave a significant and lasting impact. The good things we sow into the lives of others will sometimes become the fire that warms us. The image of Emily walking her path, carrying the lessons and love from Mr. William, is a beautiful and inspiring ending. With the inheritance he left behind, Emily was determined to pursue her dream of becoming a doctor, to continue the journey of helping those in need of care and love, just as she had done with Mr. William. Emily knows that life is not just about what she receives, but also about how she uses love to make the world a better place. The memories of William are not just a part of the past, but a guiding light, reminding her that compassion is always the greatest strength to change anyone's life. The image of the little girl, now grown up, standing before an elderly patient with a warm smile, reflects the affection that William once received from her. The story concludes with the belief that kindness and sincerity will continue to spread, bringing hope and change to many other lives.